All right, happy Thursday. So hope everybody's week is going well. So this is the second office hours of static analysis is hosted. We've got a couple of demos we want to show. The first one's no longer tentative. So Daniel, you've got the floor if you're ready.
Alrighty, well, I'll go ahead and share my screen and go from there. Hopefully this works out. Wait, I don't know why it's showing a warning symbol. We'll see. Oh no, I gotta change some settings, I guess. I didn't know that. I have to rejoin. Do you want to do the next demo and then
I'll
I'll be
go
right
and you
back?
go. You'll go out. You'll follow me. I'll let you know when we're ready for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
All right, I added one last minute. So if you're familiar with the reference "do it live," this is exactly what we're about to do here. This one is um, this is something from me. So you'll hear us frequently when we're talking about things like if there's spot bugs, is having trouble scanning something. We'll tell you we'll recommend using a pre-compilation strategy. What is that? So I want to show that real quick with the project that I've been working on. And so I'm going to share my screen and we'll go from there. All right. Okay, so what we're specifically talking about is something that you'll find within our documentation. We're talking about a pre-compilation strategy. It has a little bit of a blurb about what we're talking about, as well as a snippet from a sample GitLab CI YAML file for a project. And so when we're talking about precompile, we're talking about really two things. Number one, that we have a build stage that is defined within the pipeline itself that exposes artifacts and that has paths. And what we are able to do with the spot bug SAS job is we'll define compile equals false, and it has a dependency of build. So what that will do is it will use the built files passed to it, and we'll scan those, since Spotbugs works against the bytecode of Java rather than the actual source code itself. So with that being said, let's take a look at what we're talking about. So this is a project that I've been playing with for a while, for the better part of this week, where we're taking the actual Spotbugs project. We have it mirrored within GitLab, and can we build it? Can we scan it? And so that was something that I've been playing with. And this is this is a particular branch that is here using v4.2.0 of Spotbugs. This is the CI YAML file that we have. You'll notice that we're including our vendor templates. You'll notice that we are going to exclude a number of paths, all related to tests. We have a build defined, we have a test phase defined, and you'll notice within the build we're using Gradle, we're doing it a symbol, and this particular and we're exposing paths. There's a number of paths in which jar files are built within the Spotbugs project itself. There's a Spotbugs SAS job, has a dependency of build. It is not compiling, and so that's resulted in me doing a number of attempts, and I'll go ahead and show you what I'm talking about. We'll start with the failed jobs. This is failed because I earlier had, so build wasn't working. It took me a while to get that to work. This was failing because I also had a separate test job that was spurious, so I needed to get rid of it. But you'll notice that Spotbugs had an issue. So it found a number of Gradle projects, but the project couldn't be built. Therefore, you get nothing that could be scanned. We've seen a number of questions come to us related to this very scenario. This is where we're talking. This is prior to me putting in this pre-compilation strategy and defining a build job. So when we put it in, as soon as I get back to pipelines, we get a very different output. Number one, build worked. And so it did a whole lot of work, and I'm going to go ahead and do tab. I'm going to take a look at the job artifacts, and you'll notice that we have all of the folders that have been identified earlier within the CI YAML file, build, libs, and you'll notice we're exposing jar files. So with that, what we can do with the Spotbug SaaS job, why did this go? Okay, this is what I meant by doing it live. I had this working before. No, apologies. I have had this working. You'll notice we have Spotbug SaaS working. This is not fully configured, but you'll notice that it did find several of these several projects filled all of these jar files that I had been exposing to it over time. It found them and it started scanning those, and that has resulted in an output. And that allowed us to actually scan and get results. And I'm going to live dangerously. And you'll notice that we have Spotbugs finding things within Spotbugs, which is interesting. So we're taking a look at this and seeing what happens. But it was an interesting way, and I thought was something that might be useful for everyone to see, because we keep saying we recommend the pre-compilation strategy. We recommend the pre-compilation strategy. What does that mean? It means that we're not going to try to build it. And here's an example of it actually being used and working within a test project itself. So I'll pause for questions in case anybody has any.
So I've been bothering you folks for several months on this specific one, if you remember, right? So almost we have a very tight timeline to prove a value, and they tend to be customers sign up for Gold or Ultimate to try it out. The first thing they turn on is the SaaS scan. And the first time it doesn't work, it's a Spotbug. So we've been using this precompile. I recommend them to use a precompile almost entirety all the time. And it's great, it's working. The question is that I think we get them started with auto DevOps and use our build pack, but they tend, especially Java, those customers tend to want to use their own build job. Then they will use our SaaS scan template to scan. So perhaps that's where our scan will fail because we somehow not built the same way. So that's where I was a little bit confused sometimes. Okay. Yeah.
So using precompile requires that they have defined a build job, and that job exposes artifacts that we can then pass to Spotbugs itself. That's the link that is most likely missing. So the reason for showing the configuration, I'm going to share screen one more time, and we'll go from there, is that what enabled this to work is that the build has artifacts at the following paths, and that exposed jar files that was then picked up by the Spotbugs scan itself.
Yeah,
that's the link that enabled this to work.
Yeah, cool.
It's not entirely obvious. This is something, but it's, I mean, I was working with this. I hadn't had a chance to play with this a whole lot, so I thought it would be worthwhile showing here because we keep referring back to this piece of documentation a lot, and so I wanted to show it actually working.
Yeah, having the Java example is wonderful because that is always the application we encountered. Like or not, the enterprise still stuck with Java. A large number of applications they start with as Java.
Java has its place in the market.
Yes, it's still very strong. Yes,
it does. So it's not for everyone, but it does solve a real problem. So it's useful.
Yeah, for enterprise, you can ask them to throw away. Although they still have a Node.js, Python, TypeScript, everything else, but the first one they're going to put into our pipeline is Java. That's like a 90% of the time. That's what I have seen. So a second question is, so our customer is reading our documentation. They love this precompile because it worked, right? Then they immediately copy paste into dependency scan because they just assume it would work the same way. So I just had a conversation with our dependency scan team. They also recognize that there is a confused point there. So I just want to point it out. Sometimes our customers have an expectation when you offer a feature in one scanner and the same capability transpose itself to another scanner. So in terms of documentation, having the example and showing is very important and it's good, but there is still a bit confused in the market. They assume the dependency scan can also leverage what's built in the build stage, but sometimes it just can't, it just cannot. So just want to point that out. So you might hear a little bit rumbling from that part because we encountered that exact problem yesterday or the day before. Because we're reading our documentation and say, hey, I can use the precompile, just like how you showed it in the YAML file. But then they start adding to other scanners. Say, oh, we can use it for other scans.
Well, thank you. So if you have an issue for that where you're seeing things are inconsistent, we greatly appreciate seeing that so that we can work that into the, we can get that into a prioritized backlog.
Yeah, yeah. I think oftentimes the confuse is between SAS and dependency scan. For TypeScript, it's the same problem because they say, oh, okay, it's a scan for Node.js, it's scan for JavaScript. It's, then it get an error, say no match. And is this for dependency scan or is this for SAS scan? Sometimes we detect a language and then when we go scan, we can't scan it. So sometimes we just get cross-wired that way as well. But thanks for the demo, really helpful for us to understand exactly how it works.
Okay.
I have a question too. In the documentation that's online, are you pointing to this particular thing that you just demoed as an example, a working example, so to speak?
No, I'm not. So, I mean, I can point to within this agenda. Right now, this particular project is marked as private. It is a dependency of ours. It is a dependency that we are including. And so there's some, and so I didn't want to mark this as an example. This is something that we're using internally to test and to dog food around features. I was not intending this for public consumption, but I did see it as something that was useful to show as far as a feature and approach.
Okay.
Yep.
That would be just, you know, to kind of address what Jerry was bringing up. That would be a really good thing to have is,
Okay.
you know, one or two working examples on a real project, so to speak, that would say, and see, here's how we did it. And here's how we handled these odd cases or this odd error and that kind of thing. That would be helpful.
Okay. In that particular case, I would also state that we do have a project that has been used a lot of places where this is not, excuse me, there's a group of demo projects where this kinds of thing can be provided. That is not owned by Static Analysis. I believe that is opened up quite wide in the spirit of everyone can contribute. If you have demos or POCs that have had to use this in the past that worked, I would encourage folks to improve that as a demo project there as well. We'll work with we'll make best effort to get something over there, but that's something everybody can work on. Would be my encouragement.
What we found that really work well in documentation is the code snippet, like the part of YAML file. That's like an example, the Java example, Python example. That part seemed to work well with prospect and customers. They see the YAML sample portion, like the part you expose the artifact, the jar file. Mm-hmm. Even just in documentation, show an example like that. I found that actual example like that, just part of the code, also helps a lot because they can visualize it and they can transpose to their project.
Okay.
So I also just linked to our compilation documentation there. There is a GitLab CI YAML snippet that shows how this works. That is based on the proof of concept in terms of developing this feature, which I can link to just below.
And
so Lucas, that's cool.
And I'm hearing a lot of questions around documentation, so we can take that out. We have 30 minutes, and I'm seeing a few other questions, so I'd like to move on, and we can. Not that these are not important, but I'd like to make sure we're not taking up all the time for this. So I would very much appreciate any of the feedback everybody has within Slack or the document, or ideally an issue. That would be greatly appreciated. is there, I see a lot of other questions from I see Olivier's got some stuff in there.
This was exactly what Shuri mentioned. I jumped in the conversation because of that.
Okay.
But it's already been covered, and it's a lot around documentation in the end. So I think this is, of course, a follow-up item, but can be done asynchronously.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to skip down to Q&A, and Daniel will come back to you afterwards. I want to make sure we get a chance to cover these. Okay. Oh, this person is not on the call, and I have no earthly idea how to pronounce this person's name.
His name is Jorn.
Jorn, thank you. I was about to say it very wrongly. All right. A friend reached out today asking about a specific issue and the state of our plans to integrate SEMgrep. Do we have an official answer for them? Them, I am assuming, is friends rather than R2C, which is the company behind SEMgrep. So this particular issue is a technical discovery issue. This is something that has not been executed. This has a number of questions that need to be answered before we can figure out if this is a direction we even want to take. So this is there is a SEMgrep based analyzer that we have that we are using, and it's Node.js scan. So that was reworked to use Node.js scan. Has went through a major revision to become a SEMgrep analyzer or a SEMgrep scanner, and so we used that as an opportunity to upgrade that analyzer, which was and that ended up being more of a full rewrite and it became a SEMgrep based analyzer. We liked it. We liked what we saw, and so that was one of the catalysts for that discovery issue because SEMgrep has quite a broad bit of coverage, and so what could we use? What's the strategy? These are all open questions, and so this conclusion, from my point of view, the conclusion of this discovery issue is going to determine what we would do and when we might do it, and so that's my that's all I can answer at this point, unless others want to add on or have different viewpoints. And I can follow up with Jorn afterwards if we can. Chester, you had some questions. Would you like to go ahead and speak to them?
Yes. So yeah, I've been working with a customer who's looking to understand how we basically design CI templates that other teams inherit and include into their pipeline. So, so what are some of the best practices around designing these CI templates that folks will end up using internally?
So in the issue you linked to, there were a few responses, particularly from including the engineering manager who's over verify testing. Was there additional input or input that was missing from those responses that you're looking for here?
I wanted to see how other teams kind of think through the kind of that question of if I'm designing a, especially from the security side, right? So a lot of development teams might have to include some jobs into their pipelines that have to be executed for maybe compliance reasons or just for quality reasons. So is that how do you all kind of think through that design process? So what are some of the considerations that you all make when you are designing templates that other folks will have to include into their pipeline?
I think the best way we can answer that as far as going to be along what considerations do we have when making the vendor templates? Would that be a suitable proxy to your question?
Yeah, that can definitely work.
All right. I'm going to defer that to some engineers that are here and see if they're willing to answer that particular question.
Can you rephrase the question, Thomas?
So the question that was phrased was along the lines, what considerations do we have when we're designing templates that are going to work within a CI/CD runner? And so we have, I mean, the primary way in which we integrate security scans is through vendor templates that are designed to work with generically within CI/CD environments. So what were our design decisions for building the vendor templates for SAST or for secret detection specifically?
Gotcha.
Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, it does. I'm just actually trying to think through it because
It's been a bit.
in many ways I inherited much of it and I've made slight tweaks. So I think when we talk about design considerations, are we thinking towards, you know, works generically, works offline, it works, it covers the 80% use case, I'd say. I think there was one other off the top of my head, I can't quite remember. Oh, works on GitLab.com versus, you know, self-hosted. I think those are the few that come off the top of my head right off the bat. Anyone else want to add some?
I'll vocalize mine. Daniel, sorry, I missed the first half of that. Would you mind adding that to the document as well for your thoughts? So a couple of things that I was thinking about. One of those is sticking with default stages. So we have predefined stages within our CI configurations, like test, and it gets really problematic when defining stages outside of the defaults, because then you can't simply drop in a vendor template and it will work with all configurations by default. Localized configuration is a big point too. So if we use a variable like compile across our SAS templates based on the pre-compilation stage, if you define that globally, you're very likely to run into a conflict when someone includes that template elsewhere. So it's best to stick with local variable definitions like per job or per group of jobs. And the other thing we ran into recently is rule extendability. So all of our SAST jobs, which is something like 12 within one template, rely on CI commit branch being preset. So if someone wants to use merge request pipelines instead of branch pipelines, then they currently have to override that in about 12 places, which is unfortunate. So using something like base jobs to extend is really helpful.
I just want to clarify, when you folks say vendor template, in my case, it's most of the template that DevOps team built for the entire enterprise. So oftentimes there will be designated areas set up to set up those templates, and all the project teams have to use them or also have ability to extend. So I don't know if that's different from what you folks talking about, like a vendor template. Like, is there just based on my experience, templates are very important because they impose the standard across the organization, and you need to support all the languages that all the teams are using, and also it need to be, I think, from best practice point of view, you need to have enough security control, so not everybody can make change to it, and there is an ability to audit through to see if they're compliant. So if they do make their own SAS scan, hypothetically, how that extended template job from our SAS scan being adopted across the whole organization. I can't find any tools to help that kind of compliance audit. And also the process to make those templates and make them available to all application teams, it's all manual right now. It's not something you can map easily. So that's it's just something I've been working on for a long time. I'm working with Matt on group level required pipeline, required job. That I'm hoping that will be one of the capabilities that can push SAS scan job out as a compliant job. You must run, every application must run, otherwise they can't go to production. Hypothetically, I'm just using example. So those are the challenges we have seen. But I don't know if you folks heard much of those requirements in the past.
Yes, we have. There is a new group. So container security is a group that has been reformed. That has part of their feature set exactly what you're asking about, and what you're asking for are group or instance level policy policy enforcement and policy building.
Yes.
This is a group that is just now forming. They have it as a part of their features that they are just actively not building. It's too early for that, but it is a part of it. They're formulating what their plans are as far as what the roadmap looks like for it. That group will be is my understanding is that group is the one that's going to have the answers for that particular problem set. And I'm going to give you a little bit more information here in the document with features. And here is, so there's presentation. This was something that was a part of the secure stage or secure section or sec section strategy review session that was yesterday. So that's the source that I'm pulling from. That speaks into gives a little bit more information about what they're about some plans that we have around here that gives more uniform controls over what's running, what the configuration of them are, and so forth. So it's all very high level, but I think it's speaking to the use case that you're asking about. So
yeah, thanks for that. Although today is a security specific conversation, but it's more generically the whole pipeline, all the jobs in the pipeline, how can be template managed properly across the organization.
Understood. Yeah, it's the security aspect of this is what I could is the part of the answer that I could redirect you on.
Thank you.
Real quick, Anna, I see you had a question about infrastructure as code tools, which I think I've answered at this point. It's sitting in our backlog. It's not something that we've had a chance to investigate any further. So there's no updates that I can give you at this point. It's sitting in awaiting further demand. We've got a few ideas, and I think we'll look into it as soon as we can. It's just not something that's been prioritized yet.
Got it. Because as we all know, Gitops is taking momentum as a use case. So we have more customers asking for Ansible infrastructure as a code support for a SAS scanning, Terraform, and a cloud formation. So just wanted to check on it, but thanks for the update there.
Okay. So Ansible, Terraform, and cloud formation were the three technologies you specifically mentioned. So those are the specific use cases that you're getting most demand for?
The specific on public sector, we are seeing Ansible more.
Okay.
And Terraform. So those are the two I have come across so far.
Okay.
And enterprise asked for Terraform, Ansible as well.
Okay.
I just sent the super linter to them. I think Thomas or whoever did a sample project, I always pin that project to them or give them the code snippet.
Okay.
To copy. Sorry to jump in here. So just concurrent the same ask. Okay.
Yep, and I mean, we have one Gitops demo developed where they are leveraging TFSec and TFLint as a separate tool to incorporate into the scanning. But if we offer it part of our SAST offering, that will be great to give it back to our customers.
So I realize we're at time, but I do have a quick thing to add to the conversation. So for Anna and geez, did she drop? What was it, Cheryl? I believe. Oh, yeah. Well, basically, I think there's kind of two stages. I find it's really easy to do a CI job that includes whatever scanner you may want to choose. So if it's Ansible lint or even the GitHub super linter, it's relatively easy in a few lines of YAML to pull an image, install that tool, and scan all the files in the repository, output that to an artifact. And I do think that's something that support could probably help with. I'm wondering if what they want is like the same native support as our current SaaS scanners, where you get the vulnerability reports in the user interface and you can expand it in the merge request and thing. Because I think is a quick proof of concept for this demand would not take a long time. As long as there's an open source scanner or linter that could flag this stuff, you can wrap it in a CI job rather easily, output it to an artifact. But if they want it for UI integration, I think maybe that would be a good feature request.
Right. So yeah, we do have a solution architect who developed proof of concept involving in part of the CI job, and they are showcasing it that way. But as you mentioned, like if you have it part of UI management, then they can walk through those vulnerabilities and take actions on it. So it's good to have a feature, I'll say.
Okay. The one thing I'll add to it is there's a document, added a link to our documentation. We aim to work and play well with others. So there is documentation on third-party scanner integrations. So that is available as something that we're not officially building, but it is a way to bring that capability in. If it's something that they need, and there's an open source component that they can take advantage of as a part of our CI configurations, this is something that it could be repeatable if it's something if that's useful.
Yep.
All right, we are 4 minutes over time. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the conversation there. Thank you, everybody, for your time and attention. We appreciate you. We appreciate your questions and your interest. We'll keep these going as long as there is interest in the content. So thank you very much. We'll pause here, and we'll be back at the same bat time and same bat channel next week. So have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend. We'll talk soon. See ya.
Thanks, Steve.